A single property in Utah challenges everything we think we know about reality. This is the story of Skinwalker Ranch, a remote stretch of land that has become infamous as a nexus for a bewildering array of unexplained phenomena. By the end of our investigation, you will understand why this specific location is considered the world's most unique and intensely studied paranormal hotspot. For decades, credible witnesses and scientists have reported events here that defy conventional explanation, from mysterious lights in the sky to encounters with entities that seem to defy the laws of physics. What is it about this isolated landscape that attracts such profound strangeness, and what have years of secretive research actually uncovered? The answers suggest our world may be far more mysterious than we ever dared to believe. What does it mean when science confronts the truly unknown? The name itself is a doorway into an older world. Skinwalker Ranch takes its chilling title from a powerful and deeply unsettling figure in Native American lore, specifically from the traditions of the Navajo people. In these traditions, a skinwalker is not merely a ghost or a spirit, but a malevolent witch, a person who has gained the ability to transform into, or wear the skin of, an animal through forbidden rituals. This figure is associated with harm, dark magic, and a profound violation of the natural order. It is a concept rooted in a specific cultural understanding of balance and taboo. Now, it is important to clarify a geographical and cultural nuance here. While the name comes from Navajo tradition, the ranch itself is situated on land historically inhabited by the Ute people. Both the Ute and neighboring tribes have their own rich tapestry of stories and beliefs about this region. For generations, local Native American communities have spoken of the area around what is now the ranch as a place of potent spiritual energy. They described it as a location that was best avoided, a zone where the veil between worlds was thin and where strange occurrences were not just possible but expected. This long-standing cultural perspective is not a footnote, it is foundational. It establishes that the sense of unease and the reports of inexplicable activity are not a modern invention, but rather echo warnings and observations that predate any formal investigation by centuries. The land itself, according to these enduring beliefs, has always been a place apart. This ancient reputation would be put to a terrifying modern test. In 1994, a family named the Gormans, who would later change their surname to Sherman, purchased the property with a simple dream. They were experienced ranchers who saw in this Utah land an opportunity for a quiet, self-sufficient life, a place to raise cattle and build a home away from the noise of the world. What they found instead was a reality that seemed to actively oppose their very presence. The troubles began subtly, with oddities that could perhaps be dismissed. Tools would vanish from where they were left only to reappear in plain sight days later. Unexplained lights, like silent orbs, would drift across the night sky above their fields. But the strangeness quickly escalated into something far more sinister and physically tangible. The family's livestock became a central focus of the phenomena. Cows were found in states that defied any normal explanation. Animals would be discovered with precise, surgical-like incisions, with specific organs removed in a manner that showed no signs of a predator's attack or any known medical procedure. These events were not only bizarre, they were economically and emotionally devastating. Then came the encounters with what seemed to be an invisible force. The Shermans reported being stalked by something they could not see. They would hear heavy footsteps pacing around their home, feel an oppressive presence watching them, and on several occasions, large, powerful animals like their dogs would be physically thrown through the air by an unseen attacker, yelping in terror at something the family could not perceive. Inside their home, a classic poltergeist activity took hold. Objects flew off shelves, doors slammed shut on their own, and a chilling, sulfur-like odor would permeate rooms without any source. The family's children reported seeing large humanoid figures with glowing eyes peering into their windows at night. The culmination of this relentless psychological siege was an event so direct it removed all doubt. Terry Sherman, the father, once took a shot at a large, wolf-like creature that was threatening their cattle. He swears his rifle scope was directly on the animal, an impossible shot to miss at that range. He pulled the trigger and the creature simply vanished as if it had never been there at all. After 2 years of this sustained campaign of fear, a period in which they felt they were not just living on a ranch, but were under siege by an intelligence that knew their routines and played upon their deepest fears, the Sherman family made a monumental decision. They abandoned their dream. They left behind their home, their investment, and any sense of normalcy, fleeing the property that had promised them peace and instead delivered a waking nightmare. Their first-hand account, given to a local journalist, became the catalyst. It was this modern, credible testimony of a hard-working family driven from their land that transformed Skinwalker Ranch from a local curiosity into a national mystery, and directly caught the attention of someone with the resources to investigate it properly. The story of the Sherman family's ordeal was a powerful magnet, and it drew in a figure with both the curiosity and the capital to act. In 1996, aerospace entrepreneur and billionaire Robert Bigelow, through his newly formed National Institute for Discovery Science, purchased the ranch. His objective was not to exploit the land, but to investigate it with a level of scientific rigor never before applied to such a mystery. This marked a profound shift. Skinwalker Ranch was no longer just a setting for terrifying personal accounts. It was now a formal, clandestine research site, a laboratory for the paranormal. Bigelow assembled a unique team for this unprecedented mission. It was not composed of ghost hunters with electromagnetic field meters, but of credentialed scientists, including physicists, biologists, engineers, and former military security personnel. Their mandate was clear: to treat the ranch as a unique environmental anomaly and to document everything using the strictest possible methodology. They installed a formidable surveillance apparatus, turning the property into one of the most monitored pieces of land in the world. Motion sensors, infrared cameras, radiation detectors, and seismic monitors were deployed across the hundreds of acres, creating a silent, electronic net intended to catch the uncatchable. The team lived on site in mobile research units, maintaining a 24-hour watch. Their approach was one of passive observation. They would not provoke, but would meticulously record whatever chose to manifest. For the first time, the eerie lights in the sky, the mysterious animal mutilations, and the fleeting apparitions were not just stories to be told after the fact. They were data points to be captured, analyzed, and understood. This multi-year study represented a bold and controversial frontier, an attempt to bridge the vast gap between anecdotal terror and empirical evidence, to bring the cold light of science into one of the world's warmest spots for the unknown. The data gathered by the scientific team revealed a pattern that was as consistent as it was inexplicable. Among the most meticulously documented and disturbing phenomena at the ranch were the events surrounding the animals. The research team arrived expecting to perhaps capture fleeting lights or anomalous readings, but they were soon confronted with physical evidence that defied all known biological and ecological models. The cattle and other livestock on the property became unwilling subjects in a series of events that seemed to follow a chilling, repeatable script. One of the most common and unsettling patterns involved discoveries made in the early morning light. A cow would be found deceased in an open field, but the scene lacked all the hallmarks of a natural predator attack or an illness. There were no signs of a struggle, no disturbed earth, no tracks leading to or from the body. The ground around the animal was often completely clean. Upon closer examination, the injuries themselves were the central mystery. Investigators documented cases where specific soft tissues like the tongue, lips, udders, or reproductive organs had been removed with what appeared to be surgical precision. The cuts were described as clean, cauterized, as if made by an intense heat source that simultaneously sealed the blood vessels. In many instances, there was a complete absence of blood at the scene, both on the ground and within the animal's own circulatory system, a biological impossibility under normal circumstances. The level of precision suggested a methodology far beyond the capabilities of any native wildlife, and the lack of blood or scavengers pointed to something that altered the very rules of the event. Beyond these precise excisions, the team recorded other bizarre animal-related incidents that challenged the idea of simple predation. On multiple occasions, animals would vanish entirely from securely fenced pastures, with gates still locked and no possible points of escape. Even more confounding were the discoveries of animal remains in locations that made no logical sense. A calf, for instance, was once found placed high in the branches of a tree, a location impossible for the animal to reach on its own and a task requiring tremendous strength. These were not isolated tragedies, they were recurring data points in the ranch's grim ledger. For the scientists of the National Institute for Discovery Science, these events presented a profound challenge. They could document the effects with photographs, measurements, and biological samples, but they could not identify a cause that fit within the framework of known science. The evidence pointed to an intelligence applying a specific, repeatable procedure, but one that operated outside the boundaries of physics, biology, and rational explanation as we understand them. This concrete, physical evidence of the inexplicable forced a difficult question. If the phenomenon could affect the biological world with such directed precision, what did that imply about its nature and its potential intentions? But the strangeness of the ranch refused to stay within its fence lines. Perhaps the most unsettling discovery made by the research team was a pattern they came to call the hitchhiker effect. This was the troubling observation that the phenomena associated with Skinwalker Ranch did not always remain confined to the geographic location. Instead, bizarre events, apparitions, and a palpable sense of being watched seemed to latch onto individuals, following them home, sometimes for hundreds of miles. This effect transformed the mystery from a localized anomaly into a personal and invasive experience, suggesting the force at work was not just tied to the land, but could be interested in or attached to specific people. One of the most documented cases involved a senior scientist on the project. After a routine investigation day on the property, he returned to his own home, a considerable distance away. That night, his family began experiencing classic poltergeist activity within their previously quiet house. Cabinets and drawers would be found open in the morning, small personal items vanished and reappeared in odd places, and a pervasive feeling of a hostile presence filled the rooms. Most chillingly, on multiple occasions, family members reported seeing a large, dark, humanoid figure standing silently in hallways or at the foot of beds, an apparition that matched descriptions of entities seen back at the ranch. These events only ceased after the scientist formally left the research project, as if the connection had been severed. Another security team member reported a different form of attachment. He began experiencing vivid, recurring nightmares featuring the iconic imagery of the ranch immediately after his shifts. But more concretely, he found that electronic devices in his personal vehicle and home would malfunction inexplicably when he was near, a repeatable glitch that had never occurred before his assignment. The implications of the hitchhiker effect are profound and deeply personal. If true, it challenges the comforting idea that we can simply walk away from the unknown. It suggests that whatever intelligence or energy operates at Skinwalker Ranch may possess a form of awareness, an ability to identify observers and to project its influence beyond a fixed point in space. This turns the mystery from a place you can visit into something that might, in turn, visit you. It raises unsettling questions about the nature of consciousness, observation, and whether some forms of phenomena are not merely witnessed but can form a kind of fleeting, parasitic link with the witness themselves. For the researchers, this added a heavy psychological layer to their work. the sobering realization that their pursuit of answers might not just be a professional risk, but a personal one that could reach into the sanctity of their own homes. While the ground held its own terrors, the skies above Skinwalker Ranch hosted a separate, equally bewildering spectacle. The most frequently documented phenomena across all investigations were the lights, objects that danced in the night sky with a purpose and physics that seemed to mock our understanding of aviation. These were not distant, twinkling stars or the steady glide of a commercial airliner. Witnesses from the Sherman family to the trained scientists of the National Institute for Discovery Science described a menagerie of aerial anomalies. The most common were the orbs, luminous spheres that appeared to be made of condensed light. They ranged in color from a soft, pulsing amber to an intense electric blue. Unlike any known aircraft, these orbs moved with a silence that was deeply unnerving. They could hover motionless for minutes, then accelerate to impossible speeds in an instant, making sharp 90-degree turns without any arc or deceleration, maneuvers that would generate gravitational forces capable of destroying any known physical craft. Some seemed to interact directly with observers, pacing vehicles or responding to flashlight signals, suggesting a level of intelligent control. The research team's instrumental data added a layer of hard evidence to these eyewitness accounts. Their sensitive equipment recorded correlated events where these objects emitted no heat signature on infrared, defied radar tracking by appearing and disappearing at will, and were associated with localized spikes in electromagnetic radiation that would scramble their own monitoring gear. This combination of visual testimony and instrument failure set the ranch's aerial phenomena apart. They were not satellites which follow predictable orbital paths, nor military flares which drift with the wind and eventually fall. These objects demonstrated a mastery of the sky that appeared to be not just advanced but fundamentally different, operating under a set of rules we have yet to comprehend, making the very air above the property a canvas for the inexplicable. The most compelling evidence, however, often came not from what was seen but from what was left behind. Beyond the fleeting lights and terrifying encounters, Skinwalker Ranch repeatedly produced physical anomalies, strange alterations to the environment that scientists could measure, photograph, and sample. These trace cases offered a rare and invaluable bridge between subjective experience and objective data, providing something concrete to analyze long after the mysterious event had passed. One of the most documented trace phenomena was the appearance of burned or scorched circles on the ground. These were not simple patches of dead grass. Researchers documented perfect circles, often several feet in diameter, where the vegetation was not just wilted, but utterly incinerated down to the mineral soil in a precise geometric pattern. The soil within these circles was frequently found to be sterile, unable to support new plant growth for an extended period, and laboratory analysis sometimes revealed trace levels of unusual minerals or a complete absence of microbial life, as if the area had been subjected to an intense, localized energy event that fundamentally altered its biology. Even more telling were the instrumental readings. The research team's equipment frequently detected powerful, localized spikes in electromagnetic radiation in areas where strange lights had been seen or where witnesses reported a feeling of intense static electricity. These electromagnetic hotspots were not constant. They would flare up suddenly and then vanish, leaving behind a zone where compasses would spin wildly and sensitive electronics would fail. On several occasions, Geiger counters registered unexplained increases in background radiation in specific, confined areas, readings that would appear and disappear without any discernible source or lasting environmental contamination. These physical traces were the holy grail for investigators. A personal story of a glowing figure is one thing, but a patch of sterilized earth or a chart showing an impossible electromagnetic spike is something entirely different. This was data that could be shared, debated, and subjected to laboratory analysis. It moved the investigation out of the realm of pure testimony and into the domain of physical science, offering tantalizing clues that whatever was operating at the ranch was not merely an illusion or a psychological phenomenon. It was an intelligence or a force that interacted with our physical world in measurable, repeatable, and profoundly strange ways, leaving its signature not just in memory but in the very soil and air. Perhaps the most psychologically unsettling aspect of the ranch was the direct personal confrontation with an intelligence that refused to be seen. Beyond the lights and the animal incidents, numerous credible witnesses described encounters with what can only be called invisible entities. These were not fleeting shadows or tricks of the light, but presences that made their existence known through physical interaction and an overwhelming, instinctual sense of dread. Individuals would report walking across an open field only to be suddenly and forcefully shoved from behind by an unseen hand, the impact solid enough to stagger them, yet with absolutely nothing visible in any direction. The feeling of being watched was a constant, oppressive companion for many who spent time on the property, a sensation so intense it felt like a physical weight, a silent scrutiny that seemed to emanate from empty doorways or the dark spaces between trees. On several occasions, these invisible presences escalated to direct, frightening attacks. Security personnel and researchers reported being struck by what felt like solid objects, leaving bruises or sharp pains, while in a space they had just confirmed was empty. The family's large guard dogs, animals bred for courage, would sometimes whimper and retreat, their fur standing on end as they stared and barked at a seemingly blank wall or an empty corner of a room, only to be suddenly yelping and thrown sideways as if kicked by an invisible boot. What made these accounts so challenging to dismiss was the environmental evidence that sometimes accompanied them. Investigators documented instances where gates, securely latched, would swing open on their own with deliberate motion, not from the wind. On mornings after a night of intense activity, they would find clear, fresh footprints appearing in the dust or mud, footprints that would walk directly up to a window or a door and then simply stop, with no tracks leading to or from the point of origin. These were not just feelings, they were interactions with our world that left tangible traces, yet the actor remained utterly hidden. This phenomenon presents a profound puzzle. If these were merely hallucinations or shared psychological stress, how could they produce independent physical effects like moving gates or creating footprints? Yet if they were physical beings, how could they achieve perfect invisibility, not just camouflage, but a complete absence of visual form, even at point-blank range in broad daylight? These confrontations suggested a form of intelligence capable of interacting with our physical reality while remaining completely outside our normal spectrum of perception, operating in a space between the mind and the material world in a way that defies our current understanding of both. This persistent ability to seemingly step between visibility and nothingness led researchers to a radical hypothesis. Could the diverse phenomena of Skinwalker Ranch, from the lights to the invisible attackers, be explained not by separate causes, but by a single underlying anomaly in the landscape itself? The most compelling theory to emerge suggests the property may sit atop a kind of dimensional aperture, a so-called portal or vortex. This is not a swirling hole in the ground from a science fiction film, but a speculative concept in theoretical physics, a place where the boundaries of our reality are unusually thin or permeable. The idea gained traction from a specific, recurring class of observation, what some investigators call transmedium objects. These are things that appear to violate our basic understanding of matter and energy. The most famous example involves the mysterious orbs. Witnesses and instruments have recorded these luminous spheres not just flying, but performing acts that defy a single state of being. An orb would be seen moving through the air, then it would approach the ground or a body of water, and instead of landing or reflecting, it would seem to sink into the earth or plunge into the water without a splash, disappearing as if passing into another medium entirely. Even more baffling were alleged instances of the reverse. On a few occasions, researchers reported seeing a light emerge not from the sky, but from the solid ground itself, rising up as if the earth were no more substantial than mist. This behavior, moving seamlessly between air, ground, and water without apparent resistance, is what earns the label transmedium. It suggests an object not bound by our conventional laws of material interaction. The portal theory attempts to unify the ranch's bizarre catalog. It proposes that this speculated weakness in reality could act as a two-way street. On one side, it might allow energies or entities from a realm we cannot perceive to briefly flicker into our own, appearing as strange lights, shadow figures, or even the intelligent force behind the animal incidents. On the other side, it could explain how things in our world, like tools or even cattle, might seem to vanish without a trace, perhaps temporarily displaced into another state or location. The invisible entities could be interpreted not as permanently invisible beings, but as things only partially manifested, flickering in and out of our perceptual range. The hitchhiker effect might then be seen not as an entity following someone home, but as a kind of resonant energy or informational imprint that briefly adheres to a person who has spent time at this volatile boundary. While entirely speculative, this framework provides a narrative glue for the otherwise disjointed events. It offers a single, albeit mysterious, source for the poltergeist activity, the biological anomalies, and the aerial displays. Instead of a ranch haunted by a dozen different ghosts, it presents the possibility of a single unstable place, a location where the very fabric of the world is worn thin, allowing the rules of another reality to occasionally and chaotically bleed into our own. The encounters with unseen forces were terrifying enough, but what truly shattered any sense of a normal world were the things that people could see. Beyond the lights and the invisible presences, Skinwalker Ranch has a long history of producing biological anomalies, creatures that seem to walk out of a nightmare and into the Utah sagebrush. These are not the coyotes, deer, or rabbits typical to the region. Witnesses from the Sherman family to the scientific teams have reported a bizarre menagerie of beings that defy conventional taxonomy. Among the most frequently described is a creature often referred to as the giant wolf or dire wolf. This entity matches no known species in North America. It is described as being far larger than any natural wolf, with a thick, shaggy coat and eyes that are said to glow with an unnatural, often reddish light. Its behavior is what sets it apart. As Terry Sherman discovered, these creatures appear to be impervious to physical harm. Witnesses have fired directly at them with high-powered rifles at close range, only to see the animal vanish into thin air the moment the trigger is pulled, or simply continue moving as if unaffected. This imperviousness to bullets is a recurring detail that moves the creature from the realm of a rare animal into something else entirely. Another common form is a being described as dog-like but profoundly wrong. These entities are often seen on two legs, standing in a disturbingly humanoid posture before dropping to all fours to run with impossible speed. Their proportions are off, with elongated limbs or torsos that seem to shift as they move. Some reports describe them as hairless with leathery, gray skin, while others insist they are covered in short, dark fur. They are frequently seen near the perimeter fences or staring into windows, exhibiting a brazen, almost intelligent curiosity about the human inhabitants. These are not the only forms. There are accounts of large, winged creatures with no resemblance to local birds of prey, and even fleeting glimpses of things that are simply indescribable, masses of darkness that seem to absorb the light around them. The sheer variety is a clue in itself. If these were undiscovered biological species, one would expect consistency in form and behavior. Instead, the ranch seems to generate a rotating cast of entities, each appearance unique and fleeting. This inconsistency fuels a compelling and unsettling hypothesis. Perhaps these creatures are not biological organisms in the traditional sense at all. Instead of being flesh and blood animals that live and breed in the hills, what if they are temporary manifestations? Think of them less as visitors from a distant forest and more like three-dimensional projections, forms sculpted from energy or some other substrate that can briefly hold a coherent shape in our reality. This idea of manifestation could explain their impossible abilities. A manifested form could vanish when shot because the energy sustaining it is disrupted, not because it flees. It could appear and disappear without leaving tracks because it isn't physically interacting with the ground in a normal way. Their often reported glowing eyes or shifting forms might be signs of an unstable or loosely held pattern. This theory connects directly to the older lore of the Skinwalker itself, a being that is said to wear the form of an animal like a garment. It also aligns with the portal or dimensional aperture idea. If the ranch is a place where boundaries are weak, then these creatures might be thought forms, archetypes, or intelligences briefly pulling on the local energy to create a body they can use to interact with our world, only to let that form dissolve back into the unseen when their purpose is done. This transforms the mystery from a zoological puzzle into a perceptual and metaphysical one. The question is no longer what kind of animal is that, but rather, what force is capable of dreaming such a thing into temporary existence, and why does it choose to do so here? The impact of these encounters was never merely observational. For those who experienced the phenomena of Skinwalker Ranch firsthand, the effects were deeply personal, leaving marks not just on memory but on the body and mind. Investigators quickly realized they were not just studying external anomalies, they were also documenting a consistent pattern of physiological and psychological reactions in the witnesses themselves. These reactions formed one of the most compelling, yet controversial, layers of the entire mystery. Individuals reported sudden, unexplained onsets of illness immediately following close encounters. These were not simple headaches, but severe migraines, bouts of intense nausea, and episodes of disorientation so profound they could not stand. One security team member described patrolling a quiet area of the ranch at night when he felt a wave of overwhelming dread, followed within minutes by a violent, debilitating illness that forced him to leave his post. Medical examinations later found no virus or common cause. Even more perplexing were the accounts of missing time. Several credible witnesses reported gaps in their memory following an event. A researcher might be observing a strange light, only to blink and find that 30 minutes or even an hour had passed without their awareness, with no recollection of what transpired in that lost interval. This phenomenon, often associated with high strangeness encounters globally, suggested an interaction that could somehow disrupt normal human perception and memory encoding. The most universal response, however, was a primal and intense fear, a feeling often described as a visceral terror that went far beyond a simple scare. It was a deep, instinctual signal that something was profoundly wrong, a sense of being prey. This fear could be so overpowering that it triggered physical paralysis in some individuals, rooting them to the spot even as their mind screamed to run. These human reactions presented investigators with a critical puzzle. Were these symptoms the illnesses, the time lapses, the terror direct byproducts of an external energy or intelligence affecting human biology and neurology? Or were they internally generated, a psychological cascade triggered by the stress of witnessing something that shattered a person's understanding of reality? The physical evidence leaned toward an external cause. The equipment malfunctions provided a crucial parallel. Cameras would fail, batteries would drain instantly, and sensitive instruments would spike or go dead at the exact moment a witness felt that wave of dread or saw an anomaly. If an unseen energy could scramble electronics, was it so far-fetched that it could also temporarily scramble human neural or biological functions? The debate became central to understanding the phenomenon's nature. If the effects were purely psychological, then the core of the mystery might lie within the human mind's reaction to the unknown. But if they were physiological, triggered by an external force, then the phenomenon was not just being observed, it was actively interacting with and altering living observers, suggesting a level of engagement that was both intimate and deeply unsettling. This line of inquiry forced a humbling conclusion. At Skinwalker Ranch, the observer was never truly separate from the observation. The human being, with its fragile biology and complex consciousness, became another instrument in the experiment, one that often recorded the most disturbing data of all. After more than a decade of intense and secretive investigation, the era of formal scientific study at the ranch came to an end. In 2004, Robert Bigelow's National Institute for Discovery Science concluded its operations on the property. The team packed up their sophisticated equipment and left, but they did not depart with a simple, satisfying answer. Instead, they carried with them a paradox. They had amassed a staggering volume of data, thousands of hours of video, reams of instrument readings, and detailed logs of anomalous events, yet they could not produce a single, definitive scientific conclusion that explained what was happening. This was the core frustration and the central revelation of their work. The phenomena were undeniably real in the sense that they were observed, measured, and documented repeatedly by trained professionals. The evidence was overwhelming that something was occurring, yet that something consistently refused to be pinned down, categorized, or understood within any existing scientific framework. It was as if they had spent years trying to capture smoke with their hands, gathering the sensation and the residue, but never the substance itself. Robert Bigelow, the man who funded this unprecedented venture, eventually spoke publicly about his conclusions. In interviews, he was unequivocal. He stated his firm belief, based on the evidence collected, that the phenomena at Skinwalker Ranch were not only real, but represented a profound and ongoing interaction with a non-human intelligence. For a billionaire aerospace entrepreneur to make such a declaration was monumental. It lent a gravity and credibility to the mystery that personal anecdotes alone could never achieve. Yet, despite this conviction and the immense resources he had poured into the research, Bigelow made a decisive move. He sold the ranch. This decision speaks volumes. It suggests that after years of trying to solve the puzzle, the ultimate conclusion was that the puzzle itself might be unsolvable with the tools and understanding of the time. The data was too strange, too contradictory, and too intelligent in its evasion. The ranch was not a problem to be cracked, but a mystery to be endured. So, the Bigelow era closed not with a bang of discovery, but with a quiet hum of archived servers. The property was sold, and the most intensive scientific look into the paranormal ever conducted went dormant, leaving behind a legacy not of answers, but of better, more perplexing questions, all meticulously recorded and waiting for the next chapter. The property, however, was never destined to remain dormant. In 2016, a new owner stepped forward, a successful Utah real estate tycoon named Brandon Fugal. His acquisition of Skinwalker Ranch was not a casual investment, but a deliberate mission to reopen the investigation with even greater resources and technological firepower. Fugal represented a new generation of inquiry, one that respected the secrecy and caution of the past while embracing the tools of the future. He established a formal, ongoing research initiative, aptly named after the ranch itself, and assembled a fresh team. This group was a modern blend of expertise, featuring aerospace engineers, data scientists, astrophysicists, and seasoned investigators, all operating under a strict non-disclosure agreement. Their mandate was clear: to apply the most advanced sensing and analytical technology available to the mystery, from ground-penetrating radar and LiDAR arrays to sophisticated spectrum analyzers and high-resolution satellite monitoring. Fugal's approach maintained the ranch's tradition of controlled access and secrecy, understanding that the phenomena seemed to shy away from public spectacle. Yet he also recognized the value of public engagement in a new way. This led to a pivotal decision, the collaboration that resulted in the History Channel television series, The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. This move transformed the story from a whispered legend and a classified study into a mainstream cultural phenomenon. For the first time, millions of viewers could watch in near real time as a team of scientists confronted the same baffling events that had plagued previous owners. The series did not just document strange lights or instrument spikes, it showed the human struggle to make sense of them, the frustration of dead-end experiments, and the genuine moments of awe when the ranch defied all expectation. This public window served a dual purpose. It satisfied a global curiosity, but more importantly, it created an unprecedented, continuous record of the ranch's activity under rigorous televised observation. The phenomena, it seemed, did not stop for the cameras, and a new era of witness testimony, now shared with the world, began. This new era of investigation is defined by its instruments. To confront a mystery that has defied explanation for decades, the current research team at Skinwalker Ranch has turned the property into a fortress of 21st century technology. Their strategy is a comprehensive sensory net, deploying an array of specialized devices designed to measure every conceivable facet of the environment, all in the hope of catching the fleeting phenomena in an undeniable, data-rich snapshot. At the heart of this network are radiation sensors, constantly sniffing the air for any abnormal spikes in gamma rays or other ionizing energy that could accompany a strange light or a feeling of unease. Powerful magnetometers are scattered across the landscape, their needles and digital readouts sensitive to the faintest fluctuation in the Earth's magnetic field, poised to record the bizarre electromagnetic distortions that have long been reported. Overhead, LiDAR units scan the terrain with laser precision, creating ultra-detailed three-dimensional maps of the ground and structures, searching for any subtle, invisible changes in topography or the appearance of objects that shouldn't be there. The cover of darkness is no longer a shield for the phenomena. High-definition thermal imaging cameras peer into the night, rendering the world in gradients of heat, capable of spotting a warm-bodied creature or a cool, anomalous orb that would be invisible to the naked eye. Even the ground itself is monitored. Sensitive seismic detectors are buried at key points, listening for vibrations not from earthquakes, but from the footsteps of something unseen or the rumble of a mysterious impact. This is not a collection of gadgets, it is an integrated system. The real power lies in synchronization. When a security camera captures a fleeting shadow or a witness reports a feeling of dread, the team can instantly cross-reference data from every other sensor operating at that exact time and location. Did the magnetometer spike? Did the radiation sensor flutter? Did the thermal camera see a cold spot? This multi-layered approach aims to move beyond anecdote and into the realm of irrefutable multi-signature evidence. It represents humanity's latest, most sophisticated attempt to have a conversation with the unknown, using the precise language of physics and data to finally ask, and perhaps receive an answer to, the question that has haunted this land for generations: what are you? Among the sea of strange data, one signal has emerged as a persistent and provocative clue. This is the mystery of the 1.6 GHz frequency, a specific radio signal that has been detected repeatedly over the ranch, and its appearance seems to be anything but random. The discovery came as researchers were conducting routine electromagnetic spectrum sweeps, using sophisticated equipment to listen to the invisible radio noise that fills the environment. Most of what they heard was the expected background chatter of modern life, distant radio stations, satellite pings, and local electronic devices. But then, a distinct, powerful signal would cut through the noise, centered precisely on 1.6 GHz. This frequency itself is significant, as it falls within a band commonly used for global positioning systems and satellite communications, making its presence noteworthy but not inherently supernatural. What made it anomalous was its behavior and its apparent correlation with the ranch's other activities. the signal did not behave like any known transmission. It would appear suddenly at full strength with no discernible source or modulation carrying a message. It was a raw, powerful burst of energy on that specific frequency, and then it would vanish just as abruptly. Even more intriguing, the team began to notice a pattern. The signal's appearance often coincided with other reported phenomena. On nights when strange lights were seen dancing over the mesa, the spectrum analyzers would frequently log a spike at 1.6 GHz. When individuals on the property reported intense feelings of being watched or unexplained physical unease, the monitoring equipment sometimes captured the same silent signal. This correlation suggested the signal might be a kind of electromagnetic signature, a byproduct or perhaps even a catalyst for the other strange events. The hunt for its source became a primary focus. The research team employed direction-finding techniques, using multiple receivers to triangulate the origin point of the transmission. The results were consistently baffling. The triangulation data would point not to a fixed location on the ground like a hidden transmitter, but to a point in the empty sky above the property, or sometimes to a location deep underground where no equipment could possibly be operating. On several attempts, as they moved mobile receivers toward the indicated source point, the signal would simply cease as if aware of the pursuit, only to reappear elsewhere moments later. This intelligent evasion was one of its most compelling and frustrating characteristics. The team even conducted experiments, broadcasting their own controlled signal on the same 1.6 GHz frequency to see if it would trigger a response from the ranch itself. In at least one documented instance shortly after their broadcast, a series of unexplained electromagnetic events and visual anomalies were reported by the team on the ground, as if the phenomenon was answering their call. The persistence and repeatability of this signal mark a turning point in the investigation. Unlike a fleeting shadow or a personal feeling of dread, the 1.6 GHz frequency is objective, measurable data. It can be recorded, graphed, and analyzed by anyone with the right equipment. It represents a tangible thread in the tapestry of the unknown, a piece of the puzzle that exists firmly in the realm of physics and engineering, yet behaves in ways that defy the logical rules of that very realm. Its repeated correlation with subjective experiences builds a bridge between the world of human perception and the world of instrument readings, suggesting that whatever intelligence is at work may express itself not just in visible forms, but in the silent language of the electromagnetic spectrum. The persistent signal from the sky and the strange energy in the air pointed investigators toward a more tangible mystery, one rooted firmly in the earth itself. Towering over the eastern edge of the property is a prominent landform known as the Mesa, a flat-topped hill that has long been a focal point for anomalous activity. Lights have been seen emerging from its slopes, strange sounds have echoed from its interior, and instrument scans have repeatedly revealed something highly unusual beneath its surface. This convergence of clues made a bold course of action inevitable. The current research team made the monumental decision to physically excavate the mesa, to dig into the ground where their instruments suggested secrets were buried. This was not a casual dig, but a major engineering operation, using heavy machinery under the watchful eyes of geologists and archaeologists, all in an attempt to answer a simple, profound question: what is hidden inside this hill? The initial scans had revealed two compelling anomalies deep within the mesa's structure. First, ground-penetrating radar indicated the presence of large, hollow void spaces, chambers that appeared to be man-made or at least artificially modified, existing at depths that made no sense for natural geology in the area. Second, powerful magnetometer sweeps detected a massive, concentrated magnetic anomaly within the same zone, a dense spot of magnetic energy that had no logical explanation. It was as if the hill itself had a powerful, hidden magnet buried at its heart. These twin mysteries, the void and the magnetic pull, became the targets for the excavation. The team carefully began digging layer by layer, documenting every inch of soil and rock. The work was slow and deliberate, charged with the anticipation that they might finally uncover a physical key to the ranch's enduring enigma. What they began to find, however, did not simplify the mystery. It deepened it in ways no one had fully anticipated. As the excavation reached the depths indicated by the scans, the first physical evidence emerged, and it was immediately puzzling. Workers began unearthing pieces of metal. At first, these might have been dismissed as modern debris, but their context and composition told a different story. These were not soda cans or fence wire. They were uncovered from strata of earth that, according to geological analysis, had been undisturbed for a very, very long time. Among the finds were what appeared to be pieces of worked iron and other alloys. The most baffling aspect was their apparent age. Some of these metal fragments seemed anachronistic, out of place in time. They were found in layers of earth that suggested they had been buried long before any known historical settlement or mining activity in that specific area. The question became unavoidable: who put them there and when? The metal itself was not the only surprise. As the digging approached the coordinates of the largest void space, the soil composition changed. The team encountered a thick, distinct layer of what they described as burned rock and ash, a clear sign of an intense, ancient thermal event. This was not a recent fire, but evidence of a tremendous heat source that had scorched the very stone long ago, creating a permanent, charred layer in the mesa's history book. Then they broke through into open space. The ground-penetrating radar had been correct. They uncovered the entrance to a substantial, man-made tunnel, a horizontal shaft that bored deep into the heart of the hill. The tunnel was shored up with old, heavy timber supports, clearly the work of human hands from a bygone era. This was a mining tunnel, but its purpose was unclear. Standard assays of the surrounding rock showed no significant concentrations of valuable minerals like gold or silver that would justify such a large excavation. So why dig it? As the team cautiously ventured inside, they made another eerie discovery. At the far end of this tunnel, their instruments led them to a solid rock wall. But the magnetometers were screaming. The massive anomaly was directly on the other side. Using an industrial drill, they carefully bored a small core sample through several feet of solid rock to see what lay beyond. When the drill bit finally punched through, it met not more stone but empty space. A rush of air flowed out from the hole, and when they inserted a small camera, it revealed a large, open cavern. This was the void. The cavern appeared natural in form, but its contents were not. The camera showed what looked like standing water at the bottom, and scattered around were more mysterious, unidentifiable metallic objects. The most chilling moment came when they attempted to lower a radiation detector into the space on a line. As soon as the sensor passed through the borehole into the cavern, the reading spiked dramatically, indicating levels of radiation significantly higher than the background environment. Then, as they retrieved the device, the readings dropped back to normal the moment it cleared the hole. It was as if the cavern itself was a contained pocket of anomalous energy. The physical evidence from the mesa excavation paints a startling new picture. It suggests the activity at Skinwalker Ranch may not be a recent phenomenon, but one with a deep physical history rooted in the landscape. The anachronistic metal, the ancient burned layer, the purposeless tunnel leading to a radioactive magnetic void, all point to human interaction with this strange spot across possibly centuries. The leading hypothesis now is that the mesa is not just a hill where strange things happen, but may be the active heart of the mystery itself. Could it be a natural geological oddity that generates or focuses unknown energies? Or is it something more, perhaps an ancient site that was recognized and even modified by past peoples who also encountered its power? The tunnel suggests someone, long ago, knew there was something inside that hill worth reaching, but what they found or what they unleashed remains hidden in the darkness of that cavern, waiting. The discoveries at the mesa suggested a physical, perhaps even ancient, component to the mystery, but the implications of the ranch's phenomena were never just local. They reached all the way to the highest levels of national security. This connection forms a crucial, modern chapter in the Skinwalker Ranch story, one that ties its strange lights and inexplicable data directly to the United States government's renewed public interest in unidentified aerial phenomena. For years, the research conducted by private teams on the property operated in a kind of parallel track to the quiet, official investigations happening within the Pentagon. That changed when key figures from those official efforts began to take a direct interest in the ranch's findings. One of the most significant of these figures is Luis Elizondo, the former head of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, a once secret Pentagon task force established to study UAP encounters reported by military personnel. After leaving his government role, Elizondo became a public advocate for taking the phenomenon seriously as a matter of both scientific inquiry and national security. His path led him directly to Skinwalker Ranch. Elizondo, along with other former intelligence and defense officials, has visited the property and consulted extensively with the current research team. Their discussions are not about folklore or speculation, but about hard data, the kind the ranch consistently produces, the anomalous radiation readings, the 1.6 GHz signal, the correlated electromagnetic events. For officials whose mandate was to understand potential aerospace threats, the ranch offers something rare, a controlled, instrumented environment where these elusive phenomena appear to occur with surprising frequency. The value of this data to a government investigation is profound. Military pilots report fleeting, incredible encounters over vast oceans, events that last seconds and leave little but radar returns and shaken testimony. Skinwalker Ranch, by contrast, provides a stationary laboratory where similar classes of phenomena, like transmedium objects and powerful energy emissions, can be studied with permanent, ground-based sensors. The ranch's long-term data set could act as a Rosetta Stone, helping to decipher the fleeting signals captured in military encounters. The consultations suggest a sobering perspective that the strange events on a Utah ranch are not an isolated curiosity, but may be a visible piece of a much larger, global puzzle with direct implications for aerospace safety and security. This liaison bridges the gap between a dusty field in Utah and the corridors of power in Washington, framing the relentless search for answers at Skinwalker Ranch not merely as a paranormal investigation, but as a contribution to one of the most significant and unresolved questions of our time. Any thorough investigation must also consider the skeptical perspective. For every claim of the paranormal, conventional science offers potential explanations, and Skinwalker Ranch is no exception. Critics argue that the entire phenomenon could be rooted in more ordinary, albeit misunderstood, causes. One prominent theory points to mass psychology. The idea is that the power of suggestion, fueled by the ranch's notorious reputation, could lead groups of people to misinterpret normal events or even share a form of collective hallucination. In this view, a coyote seen at dusk becomes a monstrous wolf, and the play of car headlights on distant clouds transforms into a fleet of otherworldly orbs. The human mind is exceptionally good at finding patterns, especially fearful ones, in ambiguous stimuli. Another argument focuses on the possibility of deliberate deception, of hoaxing. Could some of the events, particularly the early ones that built the ranch's legend, have been staged by individuals seeking attention, profit, or simply to perpetuate a local myth? Natural phenomena also provide plausible candidates. Scientific literature describes rare but documented events like ball lightning, glowing spheres of plasma that can float erratically and vanish suddenly, which could account for some of the aerial sightings. Geological activity might release pockets of methane gas that could ignite, creating brief, mysterious flares of light above the ground. Even the animal injuries, while strange, could theoretically be the work of unusual predators or scavengers acting in ways not yet fully understood by science. These skeptical arguments are essential for balance, providing a necessary counterweight to extraordinary claims. They remind us that our perceptions are fallible and that nature still holds mysteries within the bounds of known physics. However, when held against the full body of evidence from Skinwalker Ranch, each conventional explanation encounters significant challenges. The mass psychology theory struggles with the long-term, instrumentally recorded data. While suggestion might influence a person's interpretation of a shadow, it cannot cause a calibrated magnetometer to spike at the exact moment a light is seen, or make a Geiger counter register elevated radiation in a specific, confined area. These instrument readings are independent of human emotion, providing objective corroboration. The hoax theory, meanwhile, must contend with the scale, duration, and cost of the phenomena. Could a prankster or group of deceivers have maintained an elaborate, multi-decade hoax involving countless witnesses, including teams of skeptical scientists and former military personnel, without a single credible confession or lapse in secrecy? The operation would require limitless resources, perfect coordination, and the ability to manipulate not just people, but sensitive electronic equipment across hundreds of acres, day after day, year after year. The natural phenomena explanations, while compelling for isolated incidents, fail to account for the cohesive and interactive nature of the ranch's activity. Ball lightning is a fleeting, chaotic event, not an intelligent light that responds to signals or paces vehicles. Methane flares do not leave behind sterile, geometrically perfect burn circles in the soil. And no known predator performs bloodless surgical excisions on livestock, leaving the rest of the animal untouched and the surrounding area devoid of tracks. The greatest challenge for skepticism is the convergence of evidence, the way subjective witness accounts, objective instrument data, and physical trace cases repeatedly align over time. It is one thing to dismiss a story, but quite another to dismiss a synchronized dataset that includes human experience, technological malfunction, and environmental alteration, all pointing to the same moment of anomaly. This does not invalidate the skeptical stance, which remains a cornerstone of the scientific method, but it does suggest that the explanations offered so far are incomplete. They may account for a piece of the puzzle, but not the entire bewildering picture that has been developing on that remote Utah property for generations. This convergence of so many different types of mystery is perhaps the most defining feature of Skinwalker Ranch. It is not simply a place for UFO sightings, nor is it solely a haunt for strange creatures or poltergeist activity. It is all of these things simultaneously and interchangeably. Researchers have coined a term for this bewildering mix. They call it high strangeness, a paranormal cocktail where the categories we use to understand the unexplained completely break down. In most other cases of reported phenomena, the events tend to stay within a single genre. A location might be known for ghostly apparitions, or another area might have a history of mysterious lights in the sky. But at the ranch, these lines do not just blur, they vanish. A single evening might involve a glowing orb descending from the sky, followed by the sound of invisible footsteps around the research trailer, culminating in a security team member reporting a missing time episode where they cannot account for an entire hour. This is the core puzzle, the synthesis of the utterly bizarre. It forces us to ask a critical question: why would a single, remote property host such a dizzying array of seemingly unrelated phenomena? One compelling theory suggests that these disparate events are not unrelated at all. Instead, they may all be different symptoms of a single, underlying cause, a fundamental anomaly in the location itself. Think of it not as a place haunted by many different ghosts, but as a place where the very rules of reality are slightly different or unusually thin. This underlying mechanism, whatever it may be, could be acting less like a specific entity and more like a source of energy or a distortion in the field of local reality. Its primary effect might be on perception and information itself. In this view, the phenomenon does not send a spaceship one night and a werewolf the next. Rather, it projects or manipulates the information that forms our experience. It could tap into the collective consciousness of the observers, pulling archetypal forms from our deepest fears and cultural stories, like the Skinwalker or the UFO, and temporarily rendering them into a perceivable, even interactive form. This could explain the shape-shifting nature of the creatures and the adaptability of the lights. They are not fixed objects, but malleable projections shaped by expectation and context. The poltergeist activity and the hitchhiker effect might then be understood as this same energy interacting with the human mind directly, causing psychological and physiological effects, or even imprinting itself on a person's own energetic field. The animal injuries and physical traces present a greater challenge, but even here, the theory proposes that if this mechanism can manipulate perception at a fundamental level, it might also be able to briefly alter local physical laws, allowing for those impossible, surgical-like events before the normal rules of biology snap back into place. This is a radical idea, certainly, but it is one that emerges from the data. The high strangeness synthesis suggests we are not looking at a zoo of different paranormal species, but at a single, incredibly sophisticated source that speaks the language of consciousness and physics simultaneously, using our own minds and the material world as its canvas. It implies that the ultimate mystery of Skinwalker Ranch may not be about what is visiting us, but about the very nature of the reality we think we inhabit, and how frighteningly fluid that reality might actually be in certain rare places. If the phenomena are truly shaped by our own minds, then the very act of observation becomes a critical part of the experiment. This leads us to the most speculative and profound layer of the Skinwalker Ranch mystery, theories that place human consciousness itself at the center of the interaction. Beyond the hardware and the hard data, some researchers propose that the intelligence behind the events is not just aware of observers, but is fundamentally interactive, using our thoughts, emotions, and expectations as a kind of raw material or a user interface. In this view, the ranch is not a stage with a fixed script, but a responsive system that tailors its manifestations to the individuals present. There is a recurring pattern in witness accounts that supports this idea. Individuals who approach the property with intense fear often report the most terrifying encounters, as if their own dread is being reflected back at them. Conversely, researchers who maintain a calm, analytical, and open-minded demeanor sometimes witness equally strange, but less overtly threatening, events like anomalous lights or instrument spikes. This correlation suggests a potential feedback loop between the witness's internal state and the external phenomenon. The concept extends to intention. There are anecdotal reports that focused group intention, such as a team mentally requesting a sign or an anomaly, has been followed by a relevant event. While impossible to prove conclusively, these experiences hint at a dynamic relationship, as if the phenomenon is not just performing but conversing, using the symbolic language of our own psyche to communicate. This idea transforms the nature of the intelligence. It may not be a biological entity from another planet, but something far more abstract, a consciousness-based phenomenon that exists in a realm adjacent to our own. Some theorists speculate it could be a form of non-human intelligence that is not physical in any way we recognize, but is purely informational or energetic, capable of weaving itself into the fabric of human perception. It would use our cultural archetypes, our personal fears, and our scientific curiosity as templates, pulling shapes from the collective unconscious to build temporary forms we can perceive and record. The Skinwalker, the UFO, the shadow figure, these would not be its true form, but avatars it crafts to get our attention, to provoke a reaction, or to study our responses. This would explain the high strangeness synthesis, the bewildering mix of paranormal genres. If the interface is our own consciousness, then the output is limited only by human imagination and cultural context. A person steeped in Navajo lore might see a skinwalker, while an aerospace engineer might see an advanced craft, both interpreting the same underlying signal through different perceptual filters. The physical traces then become the ultimate paradox. How could a consciousness-based phenomenon leave burned circles or alter animal biology? One speculative answer lies in the frontier of quantum theory and the role of the observer. Some interpretations suggest that at a fundamental level, consciousness may play a role in collapsing possibility into reality. If this is true, and if the ranch is a place where that boundary is unusually permeable, then a powerful, focused non-human consciousness might be able to briefly impose its intent onto local reality, creating temporary physical effects that defy our known laws before the consensus reality of our world reasserts itself. This is, of course, a fringe of a fringe theory, venturing far beyond established science. Yet it emerges as a compelling framework to explain the otherwise inexplicable cohesion of the ranch's data, the way subjective experience and objective measurement so often intertwine. It proposes that the final key to understanding Skinwalker Ranch may not be found in a better radiation detector, but in a deeper understanding of the mind that is operating it. The mystery, therefore, becomes a mirror, reflecting back at us the profound and unsettling question of our own role in the reality we experience. Skinwalker Ranch is not alone in its reputation for the unexplained. Across the globe, other locations whisper with similar strangeness, forming a scattered map of mystery where the rules of reality seem to bend. In the remote Hesdalen Valley of Norway, for decades, residents and scientists have documented mysterious lights that silently glide above the mountains, sometimes hovering for hours before vanishing. These orbs, captured on film and studied by ongoing research projects, share an uncanny resemblance to the aerial phenomena over the Uintah Ranch. Across the Atlantic, in southeastern Massachusetts, lies the Bridgewater Triangle, an area spanning approximately 200 square miles. Within its borders, reports span centuries and include everything from UFO sightings and phantom animals to spectral figures and unexplained disappearances, creating a dense tapestry of high strangeness, much like the catalog from Skinwalker. These places, and others like them, suggest that whatever anomaly manifests at the ranch may not be a singular freak of nature, but part of a broader, poorly understood pattern in our world. Yet, even among these legendary hotspots, Skinwalker Ranch stands apart. The key distinction lies not in the type of phenomena reported, but in the scale and seriousness of the investigation it has attracted. While Hesdalen benefits from admirable long-term scientific observation, and the Bridgewater Triangle is rich in folklore and witness accounts, Skinwalker is unique for the intensity, resources, and duration of formal scientific study concentrated on one privately controlled property. For over a decade, it was the focus of a multi-million-dollar, instrument-laden research initiative funded by a billionaire aerospace entrepreneur, a level of private scientific investment unparalleled in paranormal research. This was followed by its current incarnation as a technologically fortified research site with its findings shared through a major television series. No other location on Earth has been subjected to such a continuous, layered, and technologically advanced scrutiny while the phenomena were actively occurring. This transforms Skinwalker from a place of stories into a unique data set. At Hesdalen, the lights are the primary focus. In the Bridgewater Triangle, the phenomena are spread across a vast geographic and historical landscape. But at Skinwalker, the entire spectrum of high strangeness, from electromagnetic anomalies and biological effects to visual manifestations and psychological impacts, is compressed into a single, monitored location. This concentration allows researchers to observe how these different puzzle pieces might connect, to see if a strange light correlates with a radiation spike, or if a feeling of dread precedes a equipment failure. That controlled, instrumented environment is Skinwalker's singular contribution. It argues that this remote Utah property is not just another weird place, but perhaps the world's most sophisticated and challenging laboratory for the unknown, a place where the mystery is not just witnessed, but is finally being met with the persistent, questioning gaze of modern science. The story of Skinwalker Ranch has long since escaped the confines of its own fence lines. From whispered local legend to a subject of clandestine scientific study, its final, powerful leap has been into the heart of global popular culture. This journey from a remote property to a household name has been fueled by a steady stream of books, documentaries, and most prominently, television series, each layer of media adding to the mythos and shaping how millions perceive the mystery. The effect of this exposure is a double-edged sword, simultaneously democratizing the story while risking its dilution into pure entertainment. Early books, often written by journalists or researchers close to the initial investigations, presented the accounts with a tone of sober reportage. They compiled the terrifying testimonies of the Sherman family and detailed the bizarre findings of the Bigelow era, framing the ranch as a genuine, unsolved scientific anomaly. These texts served as the foundational documents, treating the phenomena with a seriousness that demanded attention rather than dismissal. They asked the reader to consider the evidence, however strange, on its own unsettling terms. This literary phase established Skinwalker Ranch not as a campfire ghost story, but as a modern enigma with credible witnesses and puzzling physical evidence, setting the stage for its broader cultural ascent. The pivotal moment in this cultural journey arrived with television. The History Channel series, The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, transformed the story from something you read about to something you witnessed almost in real time. For the first time, a mass audience could watch a team of engineers and scientists, not actors or dramatized reenactors, grapple with the same inexplicable events in a documented, serialized format. The show's power lies in its presentation of process. Viewers see the frustration of failed experiments, the genuine shock on a physicist's face when a radiation detector spikes for no reason, and the collective bewilderment as a drilling operation uncovers anachronistic metal deep within the mesa. This format creates a powerful sense of immediacy and authenticity. It allows the audience to follow the investigative breadcrumbs alongside the team, making the mystery feel active, ongoing, and tantalizingly within reach of being solved. This series has undeniably brought a level of mainstream credibility and fascinated attention to the ranch that books alone could never achieve. It has sparked water-cooler conversations and online debates, turning abstract paranormal concepts into shared cultural touchpoints. However, this media spotlight inevitably casts long shadows. The primary tension lies in the divide between sensationalized entertainment and respectful investigation. Television, by its nature, requires narrative momentum, dramatic reveals, and visual spectacle to hold an audience week after week. This can sometimes lead to editing choices or musical cues that heighten the sense of impending doom or mystery beyond what the raw data might suggest. The need for a compelling episode arc can occasionally overshadow the more mundane but scientifically crucial hours of methodical data collection and analysis. This is where public perception can become bifurcated. One segment of the audience sees the television series as a groundbreaking documentary project, a transparent window into a real scientific quest. Another segment may view it as cleverly produced reality television, where the line between genuine discovery and manufactured drama is intentionally blurred for ratings. This perception is further complicated by the broader ecosystem of media that has sprung up around the ranch. Countless YouTube documentaries, podcast deep dives, and news segments vary wildly in their approach, from rigorously analytical to openly speculative. The result is a cultural echo chamber where the core, sobering claims of researchers, the instrument malfunctions, the biological anomalies, the persistent data signatures can sometimes get lost in the noise of more outlandish theories and dramatic recreations. The ultimate impact of this media saturation is a complex reshaping of the mystery's place in our collective consciousness. On one hand, it has destigmatized the conversation. Discussing Skinwalker Ranch no longer belongs solely to fringe circles. It is a topic explored on major networks and debated by people from all walks of life. This normalization forces a broader consideration of the phenomeno's implications, pushing questions about non-human intelligence and the limits of physics further into the mainstream. On the other hand, there is a risk of the story becoming a mere product, its terrifying and profound nuances sanded down into a predictable genre of spooky entertainment. The challenge for any serious observer is to navigate this media landscape with discernment, to separate the compelling signal of documented anomaly from the background noise of theatrical presentation. The ranch's journey into popular culture proves that its mystery is not static. It is a story that is continually being written and rewritten, not just by the phenomena themselves, but by our endless fascination with trying to capture and explain them. This cultural absorption ensures that, regardless of what future science may uncover, Skinwalker Ranch has secured its permanent place not just on a map of Utah, but on the map of our modern mythology. Decades of investigation have left a trail of data, but not a single definitive answer. The core mysteries of Skinwalker Ranch remain stubbornly unresolved, each discovery seeming to deepen the questions rather than close the file. The most persistent of these enigmas is the source and purpose of the 1.6 GHz signal. This is not a ghost story, it is a radio frequency, a piece of hard, repeatable data that behaves like nothing in the engineer's manual. Where does this precise burst of energy originate? Its apparent source points to empty sky or solid ground, evading every attempt at triangulation. Is it a beacon, a byproduct of some hidden technology, or perhaps a form of communication operating on a wavelength we are only beginning to detect? Its correlation with other events suggests it is a key, but the lock it opens remains hidden. Beneath the soil, the mesa structure presents another monumental puzzle. The excavation confirmed the presence of a man-made tunnel leading to a cavernous void, a space that registers anomalous radiation and magnetism. This is no longer speculation, it is physical fact. But the questions it raises are profound. Who built this tunnel and for what purpose in an area with no record of valuable mineral deposits? What is contained within that sealed chamber, and does it represent the cause of the ranch's activity, or is it merely a reaction to it? The anachronistic metal fragments found in the dig suggest a human history intertwined with this spot, a history that has been completely lost to time. Is the mesa a natural geological oddity that focuses strange energies, or is it something more deliberate, an ancient site built to interface with, or perhaps even contain, the phenomenon itself? These tangible mysteries point toward the ultimate, haunting questions that hover over the entire property. What is the fundamental nature of the intelligence or force at work? Is it a singular entity, a collective consciousness, or a natural but unknown process that merely mimics intelligence? More unsettling is the question of origin. Does it come from somewhere else, another dimension or a distant star, or has it always been here, woven into the land itself, only now being perceived by our instruments? And perhaps the most difficult question of all concerns intent. The phenomena display what can only be described as interactive behavior, responding to observers and even to experiments. But is this interaction curious, indifferent, or does it carry a purpose we cannot yet fathom? The animal incidents and the psychological effects on witnesses suggest an aspect that is, at minimum, disruptive and unsettling. Is there a message in this high strangeness, or is the chaos itself the point? These are not the questions of ghost hunters, but of physicists, engineers, and philosophers. They are what drive the ongoing research today. Each new instrument deployed, each new experiment conducted on the property is an attempt to chip away at these foundational uncertainties. The work continues not because the answers are easy, but because the questions are too important to ignore. Every anomalous reading, every fleeting glimpse, is a piece of a puzzle so vast we have not yet even seen its edges. The true secret of Skinwalker Ranch may not be a single shocking revelation, but the gradual, humbling realization that our understanding of reality is incomplete, and that there are places in the world where the unknown is still an active, breathing presence. The journey through Skinwalker Ranch reveals a profound and unsettling truth. This is not a collection of ghost stories, but a decades-long, documented case study in high strangeness, a living laboratory where the paranormal refuses to be a fleeting rumor and instead presents itself as a persistent, measurable fact. From the personal terrors of a ranching family to the instrument-laden investigations of scientists and aerospace experts, the property has consistently generated phenomena that challenge our most basic assumptions. We have seen mysterious lights that defy physics, biological events that mock veterinary science, and physical traces that linger in soil and on sensors long after the moment of encounter. The sheer volume and variety of this evidence, gathered under controlled observation, sets Skinwalker apart from any other location on Earth. It stands as a unique and challenging puzzle, one that has absorbed the attention and resources of some of the most analytical minds of our time, all arriving at the same humbling juncture, a frontier of the unexplained. What does this relentless, documented strangeness ultimately suggest? At its core, the legacy of Skinwalker Ranch forces us to confront the comfortable boundaries of our current scientific understanding. Our science is built upon observation, repeatability, and categorization, yet here is a phenomenon that is observed but not repeatable on command, documented but not categorizable within any existing framework. It behaves with an elusive intelligence, seeming to interact, respond, and even evade, suggesting an awareness that transcends our concept of a natural force. This persistent dance at the edge of comprehension points toward a possibility both thrilling and daunting, that our reality may be far more complex, layered, and mysterious than our conventional models allow. It hints at the existence of principles, energies, or perhaps even intelligences that operate just outside our normal perceptual and instrumental range, occasionally crossing into our world in ways that seem miraculous, terrifying, or utterly inexplicable. The story of this remote Utah property, therefore, is more than a chronicle of weird events. It is an ongoing invitation to expand our curiosity, to question what we think we know, and to remain open to the profound mysteries that still dwell in the shadows of our understanding. It reminds us that the map of reality is not yet fully drawn, and that places like Skinwalker Ranch may be the faint, flickering landmarks pointing toward uncharted territories of existence. We have walked through the data, the theories, and the history, but the conversation is far from over. What do you think lies at the heart of this enduring mystery? Share your own thoughts and theories in the comments below.